Welcome, everyone, to the Proactive Adventure Health and Wellness Podcast. Today, I'm here with co-race director for the Fabulous Fahnestock Trail Race, Kevin Rader. Kevin, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
It's been good kind of hearing your story a little bit through people like Vanessa, who ran the race, the inaugural race last year. She said a lot of good things about you, about the race.
Excellent.
You know, I always like to get started with all my guests, finding out, how did you get into the outdoors? Where did that love come from?
You know, I guess I'd have to say, when I was a kid, spent a lot of time outdoors. Growing up, spent many weekends in Bear Mountain, just exploring, out in the forest.
Did your family bring you out there, or did you go out there on your own?
My family would go to Bear Mountain quite a bit, but then, in terms of just like going out in the woods in the backyard, that was just kind of my way of getting away and just kind of having some time by myself.
So then when did you make the transition into running?
Gosh, I wasn't a runner growing up, and even through high school and college. Thinking back when I was in high school, like running to me was kind of like a punishment. If we were in basketball practice, it would make us run suicides. So you need to have running obviously for basketball, but I didn't take much enjoyment out of it until probably around 2010 is when I really started getting back into it. And, just as a kind of a way to keep healthy and kind of clear my mind at work. I used to do, how I actually got into it, my boss actually recommended that during lunch, near his office, he had a place where you could go, Ramapo Reservation, and do some trail running. He was an avid trail runner. And he said, hey, if you want to, go out at lunchtime, take a run. And, I started doing that, and it was great. You do a morning's worth of work, get to go out in the woods a little bit, clear your mind, get some exercise, get back, and, you felt refreshed for the afternoon. So that's really kind of how it started. As I said, kind of came into it late in life, but I've really enjoyed it since.
So then you took it from running at work. What got you into racing? Because that's a whole different world when you start casually running and then you start to race.
That's a good question. I guess it was just kind of a natural progression that, you start to run, you want to run a little bit more, you want to run a little bit faster. And then, you want to kind of challenge yourself in a setting where, you're with other people. And, obviously there's competition between people, but you're also competing with yourself. So, it just was a natural progression that I'd look for a race to enter into and give it a shot. And that's my first race was the North Face Endurance Challenge 5K at Bear Mountain. It was great going back to a place that I'd been to so frequently as a kid. In a completely different setting now, running this race, and I just had a blast. I was hooked. I was really hooked. I already had a love of running, but the competition aspect of it really appealed to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've been running those. I ran, as many of those races as I could over the years, and then obviously as I've expanded. But I still, as much as I love the competition, when it comes right down to it, I love being out there and running, whether it's a group run, a fun run, an organized run. I love it all.
Well, it goes without saying that when you run, the chemicals all kick up in your body and it just makes you feel better. So that makes good sense to me. With the North Face Bear Mountain runs, did they shut down because of COVID? Is that what ended the races there?
I'm not 100% sure, but the timing of it certainly I think contributed to it. I think they made the decision to cancel that race series in 2019. And, that was, I think May 2019, they didn't have the race, if I remember correctly. Or at least they canceled it for the next year at that point. And then COVID hit.
I see that you did each run, each just the longer and longer races for that endurance run, right? And then you said you hurt your knee. What happened there?
As it worked out, like, the North Face has a series of races, 5K, 10K, half, full, 50K, and 50 miler. And when I did the 5K, I was like, 50 miler, who the heck can do that? But as it worked out, as the years progressed, I was like, well, I'll go do the next distance and go do the next distance after that. Worked my way through all of them, got up to the 50 miler and DNF'd it, which was, not unexpected. That happens.
Absolutely.
But then, yeah, just, trying to put the extra miles on. I think I did, too much too soon and ended up getting an injury in my knee, hairline fracture. And so I had to sit out a year. And so I was like, I'll recoup it, and then I'll go back and have my another try at the 50 miler, and it was gone. So that I'll never be able to quite get that back, I guess. But that's life.
Have you done a 50 miler since?
I have actually. I've done a couple of them. My first one, the first one was Pinelands. I forget the date. That was up in Maine, and that was one where I was like, I'm going to sign up for the 50K, and there's an option to switch to the 50 miler, and I was like, I'll make a weekend, game weekend decision, as it were. I got up there and I said, you know what? I feel great. I'm going to spend the extra money, and we're gonna do 50 miles, and we certainly did. I certainly did. That was a lot of fun. That was very memorable.
I can imagine. What's amazing to me is that when you do something like 20 miles and you start thinking about 30 miles, you do 30, you start thinking about 40, and it's just like the numbers keep going up and up and up. And I mean, everybody, when I found out people run 100 miles, I was like mind blown, because I was thinking like a 10-mile hike was a long thing at the beginning. And then all of a sudden you see people doing 10 times that. It's amazing.
Right. It is crazy. And it's like, you think 100 is a lot, then now there's 200 and there's 250. And it's like, where does it end? And, one of the things, and that was one of the lessons I took out of my time being injured, is that, you have to remind yourself not to get too caught up into always going to the next extreme. You have to take, because starting back after my injury had healed, I had to go a lot shorter runs, keep things very slow. And, you learn that you have to take enjoyment from those as well. Because otherwise, you could just get so caught up in just the next big thing, the next challenge. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to, know when, just enjoy what you're doing and where you're at.
You might never be satisfied if you don't. I'm going to go back to Bear Mountain for a minute, because I was very interested that I saw that you wrote the Five Sisters story. The Five Sisters being Bear Mountain, West Mountain, the Timp, Dunderberg, and Bald Mountains. Yep. It's kind of funny because PROACTIVE has a route called Guardians of the Highlands that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years, which includes those. It's like some variation of that. And so when I came across the story, I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's the story of Goth, basically. We like to call it Goth. But can you summarize that story real quick here for us?
Oh, goodness, yeah. It's been a while since I've thought about it. I mean, the idea is I wanted to have like I looked in the area, Harriman. I mean, I've been running in Bear Mountain for many years before I actually wrote that story, and I've been to these various peaks, and I was like, it'd be kind of cool to string them together as a run. And I was like, every good run has to have a good story behind it, and I figured, I would use that. I would use that story to maybe kind of like, have a bit of a lesson, the lesson being just to, enjoy nature, and to talk a little bit about the virtues. And, I work them into each one of those, the sisters, each one of the five is meant to represent a virtue. And, it's kind of, it's a legend, kind of I guess a creation story for the mountains around Bear Mountain, or the hills around Bear Mountain. And so, I wanted to use it as an opportunity to kind of look at these different virtues and in general, a love of nature. And so that's how I kind of came up with that story. I wanted to have each one of the 5 mountains that you just mentioned represent one of the virtues, and and have them be embodied in these in human form initially.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end, these five sisters would end up becoming those five mountains. And just to make it a little bit more special, to have something behind that run. And I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. I'm very happy it's gotten picked up. I know Steve Estramero from CTW has made a FKT from the route, and so that's kind of cool that I see people running that every now and then, trying to get the fastest known time on that.
Uh-huh.
I see Kim Levinsky has added. It will be, I think it's Anthony's Nose and Papalopin. So
Yep.
now it's 7, and that's the 7 summits. And I don't know how that relates to your Guardians. Do you do those too as well?
We haven't yet, but we have planned on adding that into it. So it's kind of funny when I saw that too. I'm like, this works. Some variation of all those things is Guardians of the Highlands, you know?
There you go. There you go. And I will say, I've been meaning for quite some time, ever since I, had done the original 5. I'm like, there is Anthony's Nose and Papalopin in the area, and you could add that in to make it a little bit longer. So I am due for an update to the story to add on those 2 mountains. And that at least I'm planning it to be a prequel, and it's going to be their parents.
I like that. I love the creativity that can go into the story, just the whole, it's sort of abstract and you could do whatever you want with it, really.
Exactly. And, I'm happy to have things like that because, I'm by trade, I'm an engineer. So I deal in facts and figures and numbers and equations. And, one of the things that probably why trail running appeals to me is to getting back into nature, getting back into, out of like numbers and computers, just into a setting that you can kind of let your mind wander, and writing stories and poetry are one of the other ways that I kind of try to balance the very technical nature of what I do for a living, so that I just don't go crazy,
Absolutely. I mean, getting out into the woods is like the farthest thing from computers and numbers that you could think of. You know what I mean? Just trees and trails, man.
Yep, exactly.
So now, you were racing, you were running. I see that you enjoy getting people together, and I have an affinity for people that like to kind of put their own things together, and for people that like to bring people together. And so you've been bringing people together for runs for quite some time. Is that right?
That's true. I mean, I've tried to do weekly, weekend runs. I'll try to get folks together. It's a bit challenging, and there's so many different platforms that you can use to try to get people organized, between Strava and Instagram and Facebook and text messaging. And it's sometimes a challenge because each person has their own thing that they use to organize their events. But, it's just trying to reach out to people and bring people together on a runs because, I love running solo. I think there's something very therapeutic to that. But then there's also something great about being in a group. Mm-hmm. And just having that group dynamic on runs. So, I mean, whether it's just a run on a weekend where I'm like, look, I'm going to go do 11 miles in Bear Mountain. Let's see who is interested. And, I'll take more. Let's go do some runs in Fahnestock or Storm King. And it's just, that sense of camaraderie, shared pain, shared suffering.
Yes.
And, there's appeal to that. But then, also trying to be somewhat creative about it and, integrate different things like, somehow food ends up getting intertwined into runs a lot. Like I've done a couple of runs that, start and end at a brewery.
Uh-huh.
We get some food, or you do like, we've been doing runs out of the, up in Poughkeepsie, there's a Greek festival they have every year where they serve gyros and other Greek fare, and we do a run in Hyde Park and some of the mansions. So we try to keep those things going and try to do them every year. Like actually tomorrow is the 7th annual running of the Blooper Bowl run, which is a perimeter loop around Blue Mountain Reservation in Peekskill. And we started it 7 years ago, and we got some guys together, some gals and guys at like 5 a.m, and we do a loop and try to meet up with the next group, and then we do another loop. And if anybody wanted to drop and more people wanted to come in, So, it's like it's having those things to look forward to each year that I think is appealing. And I just love seeing people coming back and enjoying it and new faces showing up. So just really, really happy to do that, certainly.
I can certainly relate to everything you just said. How it can be hard to get people together, but also how great it is when you finally do and you have a recurring event every year and you see people kind of progress throughout the years. It's a great thing. It really is. And you do some volunteering as well, is that right? I understand that you volunteer at a lot of these races.
True, yeah. Gosh, I mean, I don't know what the first race I volunteered at, but I mean, I know with the escarpment, the escarpment race up in up in the Catskills is one of the ones that I've just been following for years, and it's just got such a great vibe to it. And before I could actually work up the courage to enter into it and have to qualify to run it, I was like, well, I got to get into this experience. I gotta understand what it's about. So I volunteered. I think that was one of my first volunteer experiences. And Dick Vincent, who runs the race, definitely threw me on the deep end. I had to carry it's the timing mat that they use for the King of the Mountain. Each one of the summits in that race has a timing mat at the bottom and the top, so that they can record your times. And my task was to carry this probably 15-pound box with the equipment in it up Wyndham from the base of Wyndham. I think it's about 3.5 miles.
That's a good climb.
I got thrown in the deep end of volunteering by having to haul that up the side of that mountain.
Low man on the totem pole, right?
Exactly. It's not the cushy job. But doing that, and then just recently been trying to get more into trail maintenance. I'm finding that very rewarding. With the upcoming Fahnestock race, I've been out there just clipping the trails, making sure that all the blowdowns are reported, and I'm finding it to be very rewarding. Just taking care of the trails that you kind of almost take for granted as you're running a race, that they're good to run on, and you don't realize what the work that goes into keeping them like that. That's why I'm just so thankful for organizations like New York, New Jersey Trail Conference that maintain all of these trails. I mean, my heart goes out to them. It is difficult work. I will say I've experienced that firsthand, and for them to do it over so many miles of trails, it's mind blowing.
Oh, it really is. I've done a little bit of trail maintenance. We used to have the Redoubts Trail over. Where's that at? That's over. I forget what city it's in, but it's the Redoubts Trail over in the Highlands, where you get a nice view of West Point, and it's a very small trail, but
Garrison, I think.
Garrison, that's where it is. Yes. And it's funny because it's not a long trail, and it wasn't terribly overgrown or unmaintained, but just the work it takes to get it maintained is strenuous work. And I'll say it's funny that you'll always notice when a trail is not maintained. Everyone's always like, "Oh, it's overgrown over here," but you take for granted the miles of miles that are maintained.
Right, exactly. You definitely do, as especially you're whizzing by when you're running, and you're just like, all right, you just kind of mind starts to wander. But when you actually walk the trails, you're like, wow, there's a lot that goes into this. And if something's overgrown and you have to do even a half mile's worth of trail, it can take you a long time.
Definitely.
And I remember talking with Don Weiss from the you had interviewed him from the New York New Jersey Trail Conference. And I think he told a story about Sterling Forest where they were doing some of the trail building there, and it was taking like days to do feet. It was that was the measure, I think. And it was like I can't imagine that. That's absolutely amazing to me.
It's quite a project. Now, through volunteering, you met Charlie Goodall, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but he is a well-known race director, and he also runs Run Wild Inc. Is that right?
He is one of the, I guess, one of the founding members of Run Wild Inc. He's a board member, and he's a race director for Manitou, Cat's Tail, and a couple of other races, Pecanico Hills, races that all now fall under the umbrella of Run Wild Inc. So yeah, I met him some years ago, and I've been helping him out ever since at various races in various ways.
Can you tell me a little bit about Run Wild Inc.? Just give a little more insight into that.
Sure, sure. So they are a New York State not-for-profit. They're basically an organization that raises money for land conservation and stewardship through races. So running races and some other events as well. But you know, they use the money that's raised from the races. Some of it they may give back to the parks. Some of it they use to put towards land conservation. Like think about like the form where you've got a piece of land that you want to preserve. So they'll use some of that funds to help purchase that land and have it preserved. So you know, just to give you some numbers here, I think through the year end 2023, I'm actually a board member myself, raised $132,000 and contributed that actually to different various organizations.
Amazing.
You know, including the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, Friends of Rockefeller State Park Preserve, and a bunch of others as well. And so, I mean, you know, what we're really going for here is to try to develop some really iconic races. And I think we already have that going. We've actually, Charlie's brought in Manitou's Revenge and Cat's Tail, you know, two of the umbrella of races. And those are races that, you know, existed, you know, prior to Run Wild, but have just become so popular that it was just a natural to bring them into the umbrella. And we're very happy to have them. And also includes the SRT race, which is interesting because it is an unsupported race. There's no course markings, there's no aid station. So it's really gets down to, you know, you take to it what you bring, and you got to make sure that you have enough and know how to handle yourself so you can make it. And they have distances up to 70 miles on that. So it's quite a challenge.
Unsupported, that's a whole different situation right there.
Definitely. But I'm just, you know, really happy with the response that we're getting from people and taking part in these races and getting into the fundraising aspect of it so that we can, you know, we can help preserve the land that we all, you know, love using, that we love running on, we love hiking on, we love camping on. I mean, it's right in line with what I love to do, and it was a natural for me to join that organization.
It's a great cause, you know, and you're doing great work there, which I love. So now this brings us to like the Fabulous Fahnestock race, which is an interesting story. You know, you said it was put together during the lockdown, basically, where everybody was kind of restless and looking for things to do. And can you just give me a little insight into how this all kind of came together?
Well, I mean, you know, the group of people that I run with, you know, we've run in Fahnestock long before the race was really thought about. I mean, it's pretty much in my backyard, and you know, so we had a group of people who were kind of, you know, on a text message, because we all would run in various locations, including Fahnestock. And you know, when COVID hit, everybody, you know, was in isolation, so you know, the group runs had to go, you know, on a pause, and you know, the various fun runs that I had organized, those were kind of went by the wayside. And we were all going out doing our own thing and looking for challenges. I know a lot of people during COVID, you know, a lot of FKTs fell because people were just going out there and by themselves and just saying, I'm going to just find a FKT that I can, in the fastest known time that I can go after. And you know, thinking about things, we're like, you know, it would be interesting to tie all these various trails in Fahnestock together. I mean, could you do a run that was like the perimeter of Fahnestock, and how long would that be? And you know, when we mapped it out, it became pretty darn close to 50K. So we're like, hey, like,
Perfect.
you know, and we tried doing this, and we're like, well, what if you took this trail, and what if you took that trail? And as we're going back and forth talking about this, one of the guys on the text messages just said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And so we look at his Strava, and like a day after we were talking about it, we see, you know, this 50K perimeter run of Fahnestock, and so that was kind of the start of it. And the other race director for Fahnestock, Catherine Spector, went out and did it after this fella had done it, and made it her first 50K.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, it has, that was a great story. And then we were saying, this would be an interesting race to fold into Run Wild, because right at that time, the organization was looking to bring on another race. And we had a couple of false starts on races that didn't quite work out, but we're like, I think we can make this one work. And, knowing Catherine, she was going to make it work, because she's just that type of person. And her and Charlie and myself really worked hard to get that race going. And I think it's been quite a success.
And so last year you had the inaugural run, and I love the fact that last year it fell on the same day as the Proactive Barbecue. And Vanessa, who is our champion, wound up coming to the barbecue after the race, which I love. And then this year she's volunteering at the race, and she'll be at the barbecue right afterward.
That's fantastic.
Which is awesome. And this year we're actually sharing the park with you, which I didn't realize when I booked the site. It was actually Vanessa who sent me a message after I booked it and sent it out to the group. I was like, here's the barbecue this year. And she said, oh, it's the same day as the race, which I found, kind of serendipitous.
You mentioned that. And there's one other thing I'm not sure if you're aware of, but last year, while we were running the race, Christian Morgan, who was doing the FKT attempt on the Appalachian Trail, he was doing it from north to south. This was his second time. He was actually running through Fahnestock the day of the inaugural race.
Get out of here. What are the odds?
I know, it was crazy. I mean, this is I forget exactly how long, it's at least a month of running to take the whole thing on.
Yeah.
But it just so happened the day we had the race, he was running on the section of the Appalachian Trail that goes through Fahnestock State Park. And I think we don't have any part of the race on the AT, although it does kind of go through one of our aid stations. But it was just incredible that it just happened to fall on that day, on that time. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So how are you feeling about this year's race? Because we're on the eve of the race now.
Yeah, I mean, we're about 2 weeks out, I would say, just about. And everything's going great. I'm feeling very good about it. All of the things that we weren't, sure about the first year, I think we've kind of got, we kind of have worked out. Right now, I mentioned trail maintenance. I've been out the last couple of days just doing whatever I can to clear up the trails, make sure they're looking in great shape. We got we're getting sponsors lined up. Registration's going great. We're going to keep it open, for I think until just a couple of days before the race. So if anybody wants to hop in, they can. We've been working with the Taconic Outdoor Education Center, which is where we run the race out of, and we've streamlined some processes there, and it's going to be a great, just a great party. It's a great area to start and finish at.
Oh yeah,
very scenic. And it's like I really love this race. I've said it on the website. I wrote a lot of the content for the website, and I said what really makes this race so special. And just running in that park, it's like you get a little bit of everything. I mean, it really is just a variety of all different types of trails. You get runnable trails. You're running through farm fields. You're running up, technical ascents, technical descents, lake views, mountain views. I mean, it really has a little bit of everything. So I think that's what makes it so special. And I think that's what's bringing people back this year. So I think that's great. And last year was such a treat. I mean, one of the things you just don't really think about all the time, but how special a race can be to a person. I mean, and I think about that like with my first races at Bear Mountain, maybe my first 50K that I ran, which happens to be the SRT, which was another one of the Run Wild races.
There you go.
But then there were quite a few people last year who ran their first 50K with us at the Fahnestock race. And I remember reading some of their race reports and just some of their Instagram posts. And it really was just amazing to see how much they took out of that experience. And it was really rewarding, for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. And undoubtedly, you probably set them off on a trajectory where they're going to go do more. They're going to step it up now. You know, Vanessa said last year on the podcast too. Vanessa had mentioned when she was talking about the Fahnestock race that she found that the runners at Fahnestock, some of them were, it was like a different type of crowd, like it was a faster crowd almost, and maybe that's attributed to the way the trails are there or whatever it was. But she was impressed with the competition in the race.
Right, right, and I mean, it was billed as a very approachable trail race, and I think that's correct. I mean, it's not carriage road, but it is. It is a race where there's a lot of runnable sections. So I mean, if you get people who are comfortable and know how to handle themselves a bit on the technical side, they can really open things up on those flats and those double wide trails in certain areas and make up a lot of time. But yeah, I mean, I love to see good competition, get some some fast runners. But I also like a race that you can have people who it's their first, it's one of their early forays into trail running, and I think that's something that's possible. It's a well-supported race, so people, there's aid stations for people, so that they can take that distance, aid station to aid station if they need to. Their cutoffs are generous, so we let people take the time they need to handle the technical stuff.
You make it as comfortable as you can for somebody running that many miles.
Right? I mean, like.
That's right. Comfortable.
Exactly.
So, with Run Wild, now this is a Run Wild race, right? Fabulous Fahnestock. What does Run Wild have like on deck? What's coming up next for them, or what are they working on? Or what are you guys working on?
Well, I think one of the big things that we have, and I'm just super excited about this, is that they have there's a big land acquisition in the works here, and it affects a major kind of a major landmark in the Schwangungs, and I had to make sure I could talk a little bit about it, but I can with the folks, the other board members, but I think I can. Run Wild is actually going to be working with the Open Space Institute to preserve Verketer Kill Falls, and that's actually in the Schwangungs. It is a 187-foot tall waterfall. It lies it's actually on the 50K route of the SRT trail run race. Certainly a very prominent feature of the area, but I didn't even realize when I joined Run Wild or when I ran the SRT that it's actually not on public land. It is privately owned. They're allowed to use it for the race and for hiking, but an opportunity came up to purchase that land and preserve it. And so that's currently what's in the works. Run Wild is going to be contributing $50,000 to that purchase. And there are going to be other parties that are going to fund that purchase. But we're also going to be starting a fundraiser relatively soon to try to increase the amount that we can contribute towards that land purchase.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, it's really nice that we have such a concrete example of land conservation that we can get out there to show what we're doing with these various races. And you can't get more of a concrete example than that particular waterfall in the Schwangungs, which is really a magical place. I mean, having run there, many times, certainly during the SRT run, it really is just something special.
I had no idea that it wasn't part of the park myself until I saw that. Until I saw your notes there. That was amazing to me. That boggled my mind.
Yeah, no, and it's just a great opportunity, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome. That's great work. And how can people support Run Wild? Aside from doing the runs, is there any other way that we can, kind of support them?
Yeah, I think we have various ways that they can donate funds or maybe donate their time. Certainly, every time we have a race, we certainly put out calls for volunteers, and believe me, I mean, having volunteers is what keeps these races going. I mean, I've run enough of them to know that there would be no races without volunteers. So, when we put out calls for volunteers, that's one way. there are ways, and I probably will send around some links where you can donate directly to the Run Wild cause. I think we have various pages set up where you can, even just with a credit card, you can donate. And in the coming months, we'll certainly be sending out information on donating specifically to this for Keter Kill project. So just keep an eye out, and I'll be posting stuff on my Instagram, and if you could potentially share that to get that to your audience, I think that would be great.
We'll certainly get the word out there as much as we possibly can. I'm sure this whole podcast will help getting the information out there that they can help support Run Wild. Now, as far as let's see, like you have the Fabulous Fahnestock race, is there anything else that you have sort of in your mind that you would like to turn into another race? Do you have anything, any locations or trails that you would like to see turn into a bigger race?
Oh goodness, would I ever?
I'm sure.
Gosh, I would love to see. I mean, I just have such a love for Harriman State Park as well. I mean, Bear Mountain is just at the very tip of it, and I've been spending a lot of time just exploring the different parts of it. I mean, geographically, it's just easier for me to get to Bear Mountain, but there's just so many other parts in the south that are absolutely fantastic to run in. So I would love to see races, other races in that park to the extent that it's possible. I mean, I know Kim Levinsky's has a race that runs out of Anthony Wayne that I've done a couple of times, so I love doing that, but that's still more the northern part of it. She does have a one in the south that is on my list to check out, but what I'd really love to see is a race that hits as many parts of the park as possible. And I mean, I'm just a glutton for punishment, so I'm looking for longer distances. But that one of the things I have in the works is maybe, and it's more of a fun run at this point, is to run the perimeter of Harriman State Park, and I think it probably be about 50 miles.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How many miles would that be? About 50 miles.
Yeah, about 50 miles, and I don't know how many thousands of feet of ascent, but that's kind of a pet project I have in the back of my mind. I mean, it'd been awesome to have a race like that, but that's probably pretty logistically tough. So we'll just do it as a fun run in the meantime. Just need to find the right time to do that.
That's it. That's usually what it comes down to, is finding the right time.
Exactly. And finding people. I mean, like something like that, I remember when Kat did her New York AT FKT, and just the support that it takes when you run distance like that, and having a crew follow you, and that's kind of what I would have to have, I think, to a certain extent, if I did the Harriman run. But it takes a lot of planning, and it takes people willing to people who are as crazy as you are to do those types of things. But yeah, I mean, getting back to races, I mean, I certainly would like to see something else there. Gosh, something at Storm King would be a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely.
That's just a great mountain to run on. I mean, it would, and then it would certainly be a tough one, but because I think about it sometimes almost like the breakneck kind of the western side of the Hudson. I mean, there's definitely some steep climbs and some scrambles there that are very reminiscent of doing climbs and breakneck.
Well, I mean, you got Butter Hill to start, which is you go up that scramble to begin with, and I always say to everybody, because we've done the hike many times, you go over to North Point, you kind of go into the valley, up over to North Point.
Yeah, the Valley of Sorrows. Yeah, that's the...
Yes. It's always like the roughest climb for some reason, even though I've done so much worse. It always takes that out of me over there.
I know, but it's worth it to get to North Point, and then yeah, that climb from what is it, Pitching Point to North.
Yep.
It's that's a really, really tough one. And you mentioned Vanessa, and I think she was saying that's one of her favorite hill repeats to do, where there's a loop on that mountain. It's not, I guess it's not Storm King proper, but that climb from Pitching Point, and then you kind of loop it around. So yeah, something in there would be would be memorable for sure.
Definitely. And you could always fold in Black Rock Forest into that whole mix right there, you know?
That's yeah, that's another one of the ones that I'll run. Just I remember one time I wanted to string that park into a Storm King run. And so I was doing it, and I'm looking on a map of Black Rock, and I'm like, where could I go in here? And I saw that there was you know, they've got, guys, it's got to be like 8 or 10, you know, hills or mountains, summits, and one of them was Mount Misery. I'm like, I have to work in Mount Misery into this run. I just need to do it. Yeah, I know that would be something that would be really neat to do, and it's something that, you know, kind of is in the back of my mind. So things are always, you know, kind of always stewing.
I know how that goes. Now, you called Storm King the Breakneck of the West Side. As far as Breakneck goes, you've run the Breakneck Marathon?
Oh yes, yes, yeah. I've done it a couple times, done the half, done the full. Yeah, actually, you know, funny story about the first time I did it. It was the first year, the inaugural year. You know, I used to run out of with a group. Still run with the group, but they had the old run on Hudson Valley. It was a, you know, a running apparel and shoe store in Croton, and Ben Drew, who was the owner, was helping Ian out with that race. And so we would, you know, it was a natural. I was like, wow, you know, this would be an amazing race to run. And I was like, you know, it would be I figured it would be a good idea for that to be my first marathon, because why not?
Yeah, right.
You know, it's a nice challenge. And it could not have gone any worse.
Really?
Yeah, I got about like 8 miles in and I was cooked. I was climbing up Bull Hill, and I was already done. Cramping, stomach issues. And so I think what I have done in like 4 hours or so as a half. I don't know, I wasn't a half. I stopped it was a 15 miler at the time instead of a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it took me like 7 hours or 8 hours. And that was just me walking couple of 100 yards and then having to sit on a rock and deal with cramps. So yeah, it wasn't a good first marathon.
I guess once you start out like that, everything's got to be better than that after it. You know, can only get better from there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was rough. That was definitely a rough one, but I did manage to come back a couple of years later, and I completed the marathon, and I think that it was, I made it. I survived.
I see that you said that the Breakneck Marathon and Fabulous Fahnestock kind of helped you put together the Hudson Valley Trail Runners.
I think the ones really responsible for the trail runners, Hudson Valley Trail Runners, were Catherine Spector and Mike Lorne. I think that's kind of really their you know, mostly their baby, but what really was I think what motivated it was just there was a group of runners between those towns, Cold Spring and Beacon and Garrison, and in that general area, you know, a great group of trail runners who would run Breakneck, who would run in Fahnestock, who would run in Bear Mountain, it was just they were looking for, you know, some organization, and I think that's exactly what Cat was able to do, was to tap into that and really bring these people together. I recall her saying that she wanted to have something that was, you know, it was a weekly thing. So it was her motivation, and it would be other people's motivation as well. Like, you know, get together and, you know, prepare for races, you know, get in the miles to prepare for Breakneck or prepare for escarpment, and not only just by running, but also, you know, afterwards, hanging out with people, getting people on a race, you know, seeing what people's experiences are. And I think it's been wonderful for that. I mean, I know that I've sat in those after run hangouts and just, you know, somebody saying, oh, you know, I ran this race. I want to run escarpment, but, you know, what is it like? You know, what do I need to worry about? How can I train for it? And that's what that group has been amazing for, is just, bringing a lot of experience to people, having people share experiences.
I'm sure that motivates a lot of people to do things that they might not have done otherwise. So that's always good. I love that.
Bad idea factory. Yeah.
Right, that's right. And we've had that discussion before with me and people in the group that it's like every time we're doing, like, if we're on Devil's Path, we're talking about doing, like, double Devil Path. If we're on, like, the Great Range, we're talking about what mountains we could add to it next time. It's like it's always the next thing that you're thinking about. So it's nice having a group like that to keep you inspired.
Definitely.
So now, aside from all the organizations and races and all that, what does Kevin have on his deck? What are you looking to accomplish in the future here? What are your goals?
Well, I think I just, I want to stay healthy. I want to make sure that I can do be out there on the trails for many years to come. I mean, I don't want to go too crazy that I'm going to end up hurting myself or something like that, but I want to be able to have that escape. I want to try to share that. I'd love to get my daughter and my son a little bit more into running.
How old are your kids?
My daughter is 16 and my son is 12. So they're definitely not into it at this point, but I'm hoping that if I can plant the seed, and I'm not necessarily just running, but just getting outdoors, getting into the woods and enjoying it. I mean, I've taken them camping and, it's a bit like pulling teeth, but I'm hoping that it plants the seed that later in life that they can say, that was kind of fun. Maybe I'll re-explore that, because I mean, I had that as a kid, that exposure to nature, but just naturally while you're in high school and college, just you tend to kind of maybe move away a bit from that. I mean, like, there's a lot occupying your time.
100%.
But then when you do have a little bit more free time and you can think about ways of just escaping sometimes from some of the stresses of life, at least you can remember that. And then if I planted a seed in them, maybe they'll find a way to find their way outside. But then, obviously, like, I've been enjoying the volunteering. I'm enjoying being a part of Run Wild. I want to continue to do that, do what I can to make that as successful an organization as possible. I have my running goals. Every runner does. I mean, 100 is definitely on my list, 100-miler, and whether that happens next year or the year after that, who knows? I'm going to shoot for it. But yeah, so I mean, that's it. And then, keeping up with these group runs, just bringing people together and having a good time out in the woods. I mean, that's,
can't ask for much more.
yeah, exactly.
Is there a message you want to give to anybody running the Fabulous Fahnestock race this year? Because this podcast should come out a couple of days before that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, you certainly just, take the time to take it all in. I mean, it's a race. So, I mean, obviously you're going to want to hustle, but, don't forget that, you're running through an absolutely beautiful park and an area, and, take the time to take it in, just look around, experience it, just that's what, an important thing to remember, I think. And that's why, I loved seeing people's pictures from the race, last year, taking the time to take pictures. Some people were taking video. I thought it was great, because, those are the things that stick with you. And those are the things that, just are so special about being out in nature, and views and experiences. And yeah, I mean, that's it, talk to people when you're running, share the experience with people. Runners are all cut from the same cloth, so we have shared experiences, and enjoy it. I mean, like, there's so much opportunity to socialize out there and to share your experiences and just take advantage of that. That's what makes this so memorable.
Well, Kevin, I mean, it's been great talking to you. Is there anything else you want to say in closing before we head out here?
No, God goodness, I think we've covered everything. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast here. This is great. I very much enjoyed it, and I love having the opportunity to talk about myself, talk about Run Wild, and certainly the Fabulous Fahnestock Trail Races.
We hope to see it continue to grow, to be more successful each and every year. And we're going to give, we'll put the info out to have people, if they still want to register for Fahnestock, I'm going to have that on our Instagram over the next week or two to try to get them in there. We'll share info about Run Wild so we could get some support for that. And just keep up the good work and keep doing good stuff like this, Kevin.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Joe.
So that was a great conversation. I want to thank Kevin Rader again for joining us today. Check out the link below to find out more info on Run Wild Inc. Check out and keep an eye on the Fabulous Fahnestock race. You can find us at Proactive AHW on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X. My name is Joe. That's Jared. And that's it. No, I think that's it. Like, I wanted to put, I have like my old bag, my first boots, have it up there, but I think this is episode 15, so maybe episode 16, like with the first live person here, we can get it all like nicely set up. It's still rolling, right? Oh, I need this.